There was one day in 1991 when the lights of London seemed to dim before the cameras even started rolling. Whispers in the industry said Freddie Mercury, the man who once commanded entire stadiums, had grown frail, his appearance shielded from the public eye for months. Yet that morning, May 30th, he insisted on stepping in front of the lens one last time. At Limehouse Studios, technicians spoke in hushed tones. Some claimed the atmosphere felt different, like walking into a cathedral before a final sermon. No one dared say what everyone was thinking. This would likely be Freddie's last video. They said he looked pale, almost spectral when he arrived. His frame had shrunk, but his spirit still burned through the silence. Jim Hutton helped him from the car. Brian May, waiting at the studio doors, froze for a second. The man who once filled Wembley's stage with thunder now moved with cautious grace. What no one knew then was that Freddie would collapse 3 times that day, and each fall would reveal something far deeper than weakness. It would show the raw heart of a man who refused to let death silence his final act. The night before the shoot, the phone rang at Garden Lodge. It was Jim Beach, Queen's manager, his voice stern but sympathetic. "Tomorrow's the video, Jim. We can't delay again. This is his last chance." Jim Hutton looked toward Freddie's room. The singer was sleeping, his breathing shallow. "He's not ready," Jim said quietly. "He can barely walk." But Freddie heard part of that conversation. He knew exactly what it meant. Later that night, he shuffled into the bathroom, turned on the light, and faced himself in the mirror. Under his eyes, dark circles. On his cheeks, faint purple spots, marks of Kaposi's sarcoma. Rumor has it that Freddie stared at his reflection for almost 10 minutes without saying a word. Then he whispered, "Tomorrow no one sees me like this." He called out softly to Jim, who stood in the doorway. "Tell Carolyn to bring heavy makeup. I'll decide when I'm finished." That quiet command wasn't vanity. It was defiance. Even as his body betrayed him, Freddie wanted the world to remember his power, not his pain. That night, London slept. But inside Garden Lodge, a legend was preparing for his final battle. Not against the disease, but against time itself. By morning, the car ride to Limehouse felt endless. Freddie gazed out the window, silent, watching the fog lift over the city he loved. When he entered the studio, makeup artist Carolyn Cowan froze. She later admitted that the sight nearly made her cry. "He looked translucent," she recalled. "His skin felt paper thin." Freddie tried to smile. "Well, darling, let's fix this mess." Carolyn took out her brushes, special concealers, purple eyeshadow, soft powder, and got to work. It took 45 minutes to build the mask. Layer after layer, she concealed the lesions, softened the lines, brought color back to his face. Rumors later suggested Freddie joked through most of it, saying, "If I'm going out glam." But when he looked in the mirror, the room fell silent. "I look like a ghost," he said softly. Carolyn placed a hand on his shoulder. "You look beautiful, Freddie." He smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a show." Behind that powder and shadow was a message, "I'm still here." Every stroke of makeup became a coat of armor, not to hide weakness, but to perform one last act of strength. The cameras rolled for the first take at 10:30 a.m. Freddie stood under the lights, microphone in hand, ready to mime along to "These Are the Days of Our Lives." He whispered to Brian, "Let's make it perfect, love." The music began. His lips moved with emotion, his eyes piercing through the lens. For 30 seconds, it was like old times, until suddenly his knees buckled. Jim Hutton caught him just before he hit the floor. The crew froze. Brian shouted for oxygen. Roger Taylor turned pale behind the monitors. The doctor hadn't even been called yet. Freddie waved them off, gasping, "Just give me a minute." Rumors spread that the studio went completely silent. Even the hum of the machines seemed to vanish. Freddie sat on the floor, his breathing ragged. After a few deep inhalations, he whispered, "Let's try again." They told him to rest, but he refused. To him, stopping would mean surrender. In that moment, Freddie wasn't chasing perfection. He was fighting for control, for the right to decide how he would be remembered, and that fight wasn't over yet. The second take began at 11:15 a.m. Freddie pushed himself harder this time. His voice, even mimed, was filled with fire. But halfway through, his breathing faltered. He brought his hand to his chest, whispering, "I can't breathe." Brian May ran to his side. Jim Beach called for medical help. Within minutes, Dr. Gordon Atkinson was in the studio, examining Freddie under the harsh white lights. "Pulse racing, blood pressure dangerously low." "Mr. Mercury, we have to stop this now," the doctor said. Freddie shook his head, his tone calm but firm. No hospitals. No interruptions. 10 minutes, then we finish. The doctor hesitated, looking at Jim Beach. Let him, Brian whispered. He needs this. Rumors say that as the doctor stepped aside, the crew wiped tears from their eyes. Even the toughest roadies couldn't look. For 10 minutes, the studio became a church. Everyone watched as Freddie sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly, summoning whatever strength remained. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready. When Freddie walked back in front of the camera, his energy was different. The exhaustion had melted into serenity, a strange, luminous calm. Ready? The director asked. Freddie smiled. I've never been more ready. The music began again, and something extraordinary happened. He didn't just perform. He transcended. His gestures flowed. His eyes shimmered, and for those few minutes, pain had no place. The performance was ethereal, as though Freddie Mercury was saying goodbye through every breath, every blink. And then came the final moment. He leaned toward the lens, his gaze tender, his lips trembling. I still love you. Those 4 words would echo forever. The crew didn't cheer. They couldn't. Everyone stood frozen, some in tears, realizing they had just witnessed history. Insiders later whispered that even the camera operator set his rig down and walked outside to cry. It wasn't just a music video. It was a farewell letter to the world. Back in the dressing room, Freddie began removing the makeup himself. Carolyn Cowan offered to help, but he stopped her. I can do it, darling. As he wiped away the layers of powder, the lesions reappeared. Small, dark marks, reminders of his fight. He stared in silence for nearly a minute. You made me beautiful today, he told Carolyn softly. She fought tears. You've always been beautiful, Freddie, he smiled sadly. Not anymore, but for a moment, you made me forget. Rumors from the studio suggest that after the shoot, Carolyn locked herself in the bathroom and cried for 10 minutes straight. She later called that day the hardest and most sacred of her career. Freddie's driver would recall that when Jim Hutton helped him into the car, Freddie whispered, We did it, didn't we? Jim replied, Yes, love, we did. That was the last time Freddie ever set foot in a recording studio. For years, fans believed that Freddie's last I Still Love You was directed at his audience. But a rumor that surfaced later told a more intimate story. Mary Austin, the woman who had once been his fiancée and lifelong confidant, was reportedly at the studio that day, standing quietly behind the cameras. According to those present, when Freddie whispered those words, his eyes weren't on the lens. They were on Mary. After filming, she visited his dressing room. They spoke quietly, away from everyone else. Before she left, Freddie gave her a sealed envelope. Open it when you're home, he said. Mary never revealed the letter's contents publicly, but years later, insiders claimed to have seen fragments. It read, You are the love of my life, from the first day to the last. True or not, that story spread like wildfire among fans because it captured something everyone already knew. Behind the legend of Freddie Mercury was a man who loved deeply and never stopped saying goodbye in the most poetic way possible. When These Are the Days of Our Lives aired in August 1991, the world didn't yet know Freddie was dying. Viewers noticed he looked thinner, quieter, but his charisma was intact. Some asked, why so much makeup? Others said, he still looks magnificent. 2 days after the video's release, rumors of his deteriorating health began to spread. 6 months later, Freddie was gone. In a 2010 interview, Brian May admitted he had feared the reaction. Would they pity him? Criticize him? But they didn't. They loved him more than ever. Roger Taylor later said, people thought he looked ill. I thought he looked heroic. And maybe that was the truth. Because Freddie Mercury didn't hide from his ending, he transformed it into art. After his death, fans rewatched the video differently. Every blink, every gesture, every I still love you felt like a message from beyond. The makeup, the courage, the defiance. It all made sense now. Freddie's farewell wasn't a tragedy. It was a masterpiece. Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991, 6 months after that final shoot. But the legacy of that day never faded. The makeup brushes, the quiet strength, the whispered, I still love you. They became symbols of artistic immortality. Rumors say Carolyn Cowan kept one of the powder puffs from that day, sealed in a glass box. Brian May kept the final takes tape locked away for years. And Mary Austin still keeps that letter in a private drawer, unread by the world. Freddie once said, "The show must go on." But he proved something greater. Even when the curtain falls, love keeps singing. So the next time you hear his voice, remember this. Behind the glamour, the laughter, the bravado, there was a man who faced death and turned it into beauty. Life is short, art is forever, and love never dies. If this story moved you, subscribe for more untold moments that shape music history. Drop a comment below. What's the Freddie Mercury moment that lives forever in your heart? And remember, every legend leaves a message. Sometimes you just have to listen closely.